Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. A child suffering from severe hunger reflects the tragedy of the Povolji famine, which struck Ukrainian villages between 1921 and 1922. Agricultural and social collapse created a devastating humanitarian crisis in the region. The image stands as a silent testimony to the victims of this tragic period. Jenny Wanda Barkman served as a guard at the Stutthof detention camp during World War II, where thousands of victims were processed by the German regime. The heap of shoes in the background stands as a silent physical trace of the scale of operations and the fate of prisoners at that site. During World War I, the sculptor Anna Coleman Ladd founded a studio in Paris dedicated to making prosthetic masks for service members with severe facial injuries. The process used clay molds and electroplated copper to restore a familiar appearance, helping these veterans return to public life. Navy divers faced extreme conditions during rescue and containment work after what happened at Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1941, the battleship USS Arizona was damaged, releasing tons of fuel that made technical operations on the ship's wrecked structure far more difficult. A French woman accused of collaboration appears wearing part of a German military uniform in a 1940s photograph. Found with a captured combatant, the image documents complex social relationships and political tensions in occupied France during World War II. British soldiers inspect captured Goliath units, a small tracked vehicle remotely controlled by German engineering. Built to operate under enemy tanks, it ran by cable and carried a demolition charge, showing wartime technological advances in Europe during World War II. Protective gear developed for British troops is displayed during World War I, showing the push for safety on the battlefield. The set includes a steel helmet, special slit goggles against shrapnel, and a metal glove with an attached blade. Harvesting natural ice from frozen lakes and rivers was an essential business in the early 20th century. Men used saws and hand tools to cut large blocks that were stored in insulated ice houses, keeping food preserved long before electric refrigeration. German soldiers conduct mounted tactical training in 1939. The scene shows impressive balance, with one soldier displaying his weapon while standing on the saddle. Such drills reinforced cavalry's role in military logistics. During the liberation period in May 1945, Jean Vosté's presence at the Dachau complex revealed the wide range of individual paths within a global conflict. Born in the Belgian Congo, he remained detained until Allied forces arrived and found survivors in extreme conditions. Flamingos at the Metro Zoo in Miami were sheltered in a public restroom to protect them from Hurricane Andrew on August 24, 1992. The powerful storm caused major damage across Florida, requiring emergency steps to save local wildlife. The image became a symbol of resilience and care. The debut of Christian Dior's New Look collection in 1947 sparked intense reactions on the streets of Paris. On October 8, 1947, local market vendors confronted a model and damaged her luxury outfit as a protest against extravagant fabric use during post-war shortages. Nigeria's separatist conflict reached a critical point in 1968 as the Biafra region faced severe logistical and humanitarian challenges. The image captures the face of local resistance, with essential supplies carried by hand to the front lines during that turbulent year. Jacques Plant appears in the locker room in 1959, the year he became a pioneer by wearing a protective mask in professional hockey. After a serious facial injury, the Montreal Canadiens goalie challenged the norms of the time to put safety first in competition. Italian explorer Attilio Gatti appears alongside two hired members of Pygmy peoples and a restrained gorilla during an expedition in the Belgian Congo. The May 15, 1930 record illustrates the era's practices of exploration and documenting African wildlife under European colonial rule in the early 20th century. Professional rat catchers pose in front of a pile of captured rodents in Sydney during an epidemic outbreak that hit Australia in 1900. The public health effort aimed to slow the spread of disease by tightly controlling urban pests, a crucial measure at the time. A French woman has her head shaved by civilians in 1944 as a public punishment for alleged collaboration with German occupation forces. This symbolic humiliation often occurred during the liberation of French towns, exposing internal tensions and the local desire for payback. Women detainees take part in a handling training session at a prison unit on Roosevelt Island in New York City in 1932. Unusual for the prison environment of the time, the practice reflects early reform efforts and structured activities inside United States penal institutions before major system-wide changes. Police officers confront beachgoers in Chicago on July 12, 1922, for wearing swimsuits considered too short by the standards of the time. The image shows strict moral policing of women's clothing in public spaces, where breaking local rules could lead to arrests. A woman holds her baby while sitting at the edge of the area allowed for black passengers on a bus in the United States. The 1950s image shows a racial segregation sign, highlighting segregation laws that restricted physical space and dignity for African American citizens in daily life. An innovation from 1941 introduced a rowboat made entirely of clear lucite to provide a clean view of the riverbed. The piece combined modern design with recreational use, showing the potential of new industrial plastics gaining ground before the war. Eric Salomon challenged strict United States Supreme Court rules by taking a secret photograph during a session in 1932. Using a camera hidden in a fake plaster cast, he captured one of the rare, forbidden moments inside the court, showing the justices at work in an era of formal austerity. The kangwei was a device for public punishment and public exposure used in Imperial China for offenses considered minor. The prisoner carried a heavy wooden board around the neck, which limited full hand movement and made eating difficult. Travelers and photographers documented this practice in the late Qing dynasty. The use of the kangwei in China as a form of public punishment lasted for centuries, exposing the accused to social judgment in front of the community. The wooden structure limited basic movement, forcing the person to rely on others for essential needs, while serving the sentence under watchful local authorities. Mobilized Russian peasants organized a major resistance during the Tambov Rebellion in 1901. The rural uprising against Soviet government policies became one of the biggest internal challenges after the revolution. Their mobilization shows the deep social tensions in the countryside. Long lines formed on sidewalks for the premiere of Star Wars on June 24, 1977. The crowd's excitement signaled a new era for science fiction movies, cementing the cultural impact of George Lucas's film that reshaped entertainment worldwide. British explorers look out over an icy horizon through a unique natural formation on January 5, 1911. The expedition, led by Robert Falcon Scott, aimed to reach the South Pole, facing Antarctica's isolation amid massive icebergs that framed scientific progress in the region. In 1933, crowds gathered under umbrellas in Boring, Belgium, hoping to see a Marian apparition at the viaduct. The fervor grew after children's reports and drew pilgrims from many places for vigils and prayers. For days, the small town became a stage for devotion and intense shared anticipation. An Easter Bunny costume with exaggerated features and a rough early design interacts with children during the 1950s. Mask styles from that period often looked unsettling, far from the cheerful, friendly look that became common in later years. A curious performance took shape in 1865 as Victorian entertainment leaned into the strange to draw fairground crowds. A central support allowed the performer to remain suspended, creating the illusion of an inanimate toy that challenged people's sense of what was real. A woman tests an unusual exercise device in 1936 designed to massage and slim the legs using metal rollers. As the machine runs, she passes the time by knitting, illustrating the era's curious tech-driven attempts at beauty and wellness between the wars. Pilot Robert Corder performs a technical demonstration of his flying belt at Fort Myer, Virginia. On June 10, 1969, the device developed by Bell Aerosystems defied gravity over nearby rooftops, powered by a jet turbine that promised to reshape personal mobility. A curious gadget stands out in this photograph, taken in 1948. The device is a mechanical spoon, fitted with a small propeller designed to cool hot soup. The invention reflects the creativity and tech optimism of the post-war period. Swedish doctor Gustav Zander revolutionized mechanotherapy in the 19th century by creating machines that used resistance effort to improve physical health. His torso stretching machine allowed therapeutic exercises to be built into Victorian routines, aiming to correct posture and ease daily strain. The concept of disruptive camouflage emerged as a creative way to confuse observers' perception during World War I. Instead of hiding an object, the pattern used contrasting geometric shapes to distort direction and speed, making accurate targeting harder. Workers from Ireland's Lamplighters Department operate in the streets in 1898, keeping public lighting running by hand. Carrying ladders and long poles, they helped maintain nighttime safety in cities, representing a trade that peaked during the 19th century. Operators at the National Telephone Company work intensely at the magneto exchange switchboard, manually connecting calls in the early 20th century. The room, packed with cables and switches, highlights women's essential role in expanding global communications infrastructure. Stockholm's imposing Telefontornet appears as an engineering landmark in 1890, connecting more than 5,000 telephone lines across the Swedish capital. The dense web of metal wires radiating from the tower symbolizes the birth of urban hyperconnectivity and the rapid rise of telecommunications. A crowd of children fills a typical 1908 playground where complex metal structures served for exercise and play. Tall ladders and climbing bars dominated public parks then, reflecting early century design tastes and safety standards. Tourists sit on the raised seats of one of the first sightseeing buses in New York City in 1904. The Seeing New York Company vehicle reflects the start of organized tourism in the metropolis, letting passengers view the city's architecture from a prime vantage point. giant balloons float above New York City streets during the traditional Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. The year 1939 marked a memorable edition featuring figures like Uncle Sam and popular culture characters. Thousands of spectators watched the floats pass between the city's buildings. The fuselage of a Stuka aircraft displays a peculiar smiling face, painting during World War II. This kind of customization aimed to give the plane a distinct visual identity during air operations, reflecting pilots' habit of personalizing their flight equipment. President Emil Hácha leaves Berlin for Prague after Czechoslovakia's independence is handed over to the German government. The departure took place on March 15, 1939, marking the establishment of the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia under external control during Europe's political expansion. King Mahendra appears dressed in full regalia during his coronation ceremony in Nepal, held on May 2, 1956, beginning a long reign that would last until 1972. He was responsible for implementing the Panchayat system, a centralizing political model that shaped Nepal's government structure for decades. The imposing Bolshoi Theater dominates Moscow's cityscape in the 1930s, showing everyday life in a capital undergoing major architectural change. Electric streetcars and pedestrians fill Theater Square, while the gardens and traffic patterns tell the story of that energetic Russian era. Soviet citizens proudly pose beside their first television sets, marking a milestone of domestic modernity in the Soviet Union. The appliance in living rooms with typical wallpaper symbolizes technological progress and new access to information and entertainment. Labor Day celebrations in Lviv in Soviet Ukraine drew crowds to official state-organized parades. On May 1, 1968, a young woman was photographed holding balloons during the public event, showing everyday civilian life under the cultural and political influence of that decade. Students gather in an auditorium for the opening class at Moscow State University on September 1, 1945. The event marked the return of academic life at the Lomonosov Institution right after the end of the world conflict, symbolizing the Soviet society's push for intellectual rebuilding. Children look for moments of play on Manchester streets amid wartime daily life in 1943. Using whatever city infrastructure was available to improvise games, English kids kept up a sense of normal life while the city faced the social and economic impacts of the European conflict. A vending machine installed in the New York City subway in 1953 offers chocolate bars for just 1 cent. The hand-pull lever mechanism and the range of flavors on display reflect post-war retail automation, serving the steady flow of writers underground. Athlete Howard P. Drew represented the United States at the 1912 Stockholm Olympics as the first major black sprinter to gain international recognition. His trip to Sweden symbolized overcoming racial barriers in competitive sports, opening the door for future generations of athletes. Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt showed his athletic dominance by smiling at cameras during the 100-meter semifinal at the Rio de Janeiro Olympics on August 14, 2016. The iconic moment captured his unmatched speed and charisma, becoming a landmark in world sports history. Bobby Gibb broke gender barriers on April 19, 1966, by becoming the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon. Without an official bib number because women were barred at the time, she challenged sports rules and proved women's athletic ability in distance running. Brazilian marathon runner Vanderlei Cordeiro de Lima was confronted by a protester during the final race of the Athens Games on August 29, 2004. Even after the unexpected incident affected his lead, he showed Olympic spirit by earning the bronze medal and worldwide respect. A rare moment in Washington State shows Chief Thomas K. Yallop, leader of the Yakima Tribal Council, on horseback while visiting his son during military training. The meeting took place at the Yakima Firing Center on August 20, 1954, highlighting the contrast between tradition and military technology. During World War II, Germany developed the Krummlauf, a curved barrel attachment designed for assault rifles. This technical innovation allowed soldiers to fire around corners or over obstacles without exposing their bodies to enemy fire, aiming to increase safety in urban combat. A motorcyclist takes a coffee break beside his Brooke Superior with a sidecar on the Isle of Man in 1955. The image captures the spirit of two-wheel culture in a place long tied to speed racing, reflecting rugged design and the prestige of mid-20th century British engineering. The iconic Golden Gate Bridge officially opened on May 27, 1937, linking San Francisco to Marin County. Instead of a traditional silk ribbon, officials used a blowtorch to cut a symbolic silver chain. The event marked a civil engineering triumph over the Pacific waters. Levi Strauss & Company headquarters in 1880 shows San Francisco's imposing industrial architecture with classic arches and multiple floors. The building served as a logistics hub for global distribution of durable workwear, strengthening the brand's role in economic development. British actress Jessie Matthews shows off an extravagant costume during the revue Evergreen in 1934. The huge headpiece, decorated with feathers and sparkle, illustrates the sophistication of theater productions at the time. The image highlights the visual spectacle that defined stage entertainment. Actors and crew gather in a CBS studio in 1934 to record an episode of the popular crime investigation radio series Gangbusters. The image details the creative use of handmade sound effects and simulated gunfire effects to deliver maximum realism for broadcasts that captivated audiences of the time. Nintendo began its long journey on September 23, 1889, in the city of Kyoto. Fusajiro Yamauchi founded a small workshop to make hanafuda, a traditional handmade Japanese card deck. The original storefront shows the name Marufuku, revealing the humble roots of a global entertainment giant. Several examples of the iconic DeLorean were stacked on car lifts to prevent damage during Hurricane Dorian in Florida. This precaution took place in September 2019 at the local company's headquarters. The image shows the logistical effort to protect these rare vehicles. Gas stations in Kyiv adopted a futuristic look inspired by the space race in the late 1970s. The circular design, reminiscent of flying saucers, reflected Soviet-era tech optimism, using suspended structures to streamline service for vehicles moving through the Ukrainian capital. Soviet futuristic design flourished in cities like Kyiv, where gas stations with suspended flying saucer roofs appeared in the 1970s. This space-age look reflected the technological ambitions of an era shaped by the space race and the use of bold geometric forms in urban planning. Between simple shop windows and light traffic, a Parisian woman crosses a street still shaped by the post-war moment, carrying a baguette and 6 bottles of drinks. The scene shows daily life pushing forward in Paris in 1945 as the city began to rebuild. Photo credit goes to Branson Decoux. A driver pulls a picnic basket from a luxurious Rolls-Royce in 1952. Parked by the river, the car offers a prime view of the New York City skyline, marked by iconic skyscrapers. The moment reflects the elegance and lifestyle of the urban elite in that decade. A man in Houston experiences pure irony in 1966 as he stands stranded on the road. Even though he is hauling dozens of used tires in his pickup truck bed, the vehicle ends up with a flat tire. The photo captures a comical kind of frustration caused by an unexpected setback. A man in a hat and formal clothes poses for an unusual portrait while holding a small donkey on his lap in a wicker chair. The late 19th or early 20th century photo highlights a curious relationship between people and working animals. This kind of studio image was common at the time. A friendship that stretches across time is captured in this 1910 photo where the era's quirky turn-of-the-century humor shows through. Seated in a peaceful garden, the figures share a quiet moment with their pipes, revealing the lightness found in everyday life of that fascinating decade. A bride and groom pose for a classic wedding portrait in the early 20th century, wearing formal outfits full of period details. The bride's structured dress and the couple's solemn expressions reflect the social and aesthetic conventions of an era when studio photography celebrated marriage and the start of new families. Victorian mothers often hid under cloths or behind furniture to keep their babies still during the long photo exposures of the 19th century. This 1860 practice aimed to ensure a sharp image of the child while the mother acted as an unseen support. An early Coca-Cola bottling site in Dublin, Georgia, shows the start of the brand's commercial expansion in 1886. The image includes basic delivery vehicles and employees in front of a rustic storefront, highlighting how distribution logistics began shaping global consumption. Margaret Ann Neve was born in 1792 and lived until 1902, becoming one of the rare people to witness the transition across 3 different centuries. At 110 years old, her long life let her span eras of major global change. Barack Obama appears dressed as a pirate next to his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, during the 1960s. The family photo taken in Hawaii shows the future President of the United States in a playful childhood moment. This image humanizes the path of one of the most influential political figures of the 21st century. An avant-garde mood took over New York City in 1955 during the Art Students League Ball. Artists explored distortion of the human figure with surreal makeup that turned torsos into expressive faces. This kind of aesthetic intervention challenged the social conventions of the time. Members of the New York City chapter of the Fat Men's Club pose for a group portrait around 1930. Wearing formal suits and hats, they took part in gatherings that treated body weight as a sign of prosperity, a social convention common in the early 20th century. A smiling woman appears amid a mountain of grapes in Burbank, California in 1930. The image celebrates one of the largest harvests ever documented in the area, symbolizing local agricultural strength. The abundance highlights how important grape growing was to California's economy. Petr Mshvenieradze, known as Kako, was a central figure in water polo in the Soviet Union, taking part in notable Olympic Games. In 1990, the veteran athlete was photographed with his grandson, carrying the sporting legacy of a dynasty that dominated the pools. 20 surviving veterans of the Third French Siege of Tarragona, originally in 1809, posed for this group record in 1869. the photograph preserves the fighter's memory 6 decades after the Napoleonic conflicts, highlighting the survivor's longevity in an era of major change. A wooden house is hauled on a modified truck in the San Francisco area circa 1919. The scene shows practical solutions during rapid urban growth and the need to move entire buildings. This method anticipated ideas of mobile housing and urban logistics in the early 20th century. Veteran soldiers from Napoleon's army were photographed in rare images in 1858, wearing their original uniforms and medals from past campaigns. These photos capture survivors of the Napoleonic campaigns decades after the conflicts, preserving details of an iconic military era. Alfred Maudslay recorded the grandeur of Stella D at Copan during his archaeological expeditions in the late 19th century. The monolith shows the sophistication of Maya hieroglyphic writing and detailed depictions of rulers. This documentation was essential for studying the civilization in the Honduras region. Singer and actor Al Jolson used heavy theatrical makeup to create his character in the 1934 film Wonderbar. That kind of stage-style makeup was common in entertainment at the time. The image reflects aesthetic and cultural conventions in United States cinema in the first half of the 20th century. A crowd gathered at the port of Ostend to watch a British airship flying overhead in 1914. The image captures tension and technological curiosity at the start of World War I, when aviation was beginning to play a key strategic role in monitoring Belgium's coastline. A young Norwegian woman poses for a portrait in Trondheim wearing traditional clothing reflecting Scandinavian cultural identity in the early 20th century. The image highlights the preservation of regional customs and the era's look. It becomes a valuable record of everyday life and family traditions in Norway. Everyday life in Egypt during the 1870s reveals the preservation of age-old customs alongside the rise of documentary photography. Traditional clothing and the use of a water pipe shaped the social scene, showing local culture that held on amid global changes in the late 19th century. The grandeur of the House of the Nuns at Chichen Itza reveals the sophistication of Maya architecture, with facades richly adorned with god reliefs and geometric patterns. Observers standing in the doorway show the monumental scale of this ancient center of knowledge and governance in Mexico. Robert Kennedy and Mayor Willy Brandt look out over the Berlin Wall on February 22, 1962, during a period of high Cold War diplomatic tension. The official visit reinforced a diplomatic commitment to the western side of the city, symbolizing resistance to the barrier that divided Germany. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.